Okay, Dr. Marizel Van Rensburg, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Sid. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. And yourself? I'm actually very happy to catch up with you. It's been a while. So, my first question I wanted to ask you is about understanding the gut's role. Many people think of the gut only in terms of digestion. Can you explain how it's connected to things like mood, immunity, and skin health?
Yes, of course. Let me just start by saying thank you for having me again. It has been some time, but it's lovely to be on your channel again. Yeah, I think to answer that question, we really need to go back and go to the human understanding of what our bodies are made up of. And so in 1990, scientists started looking at the human genome and they wanted to map out exactly how many genes a human being has. And it turns out that we only have about 20,000 different genes. And
Wow.
then we're like, okay, that's amazing, until we found out that a rice plant has 47,000 genes, and then we're like, that makes no sense. How could a rice plant need more genetic material than we do? We certainly do more. Yeah, and so then they concluded that study in 2003 with these findings, and then they started
Mhm.
looking into the microbiome. And they started looking at that in 2007. So they started going to the gut, and they found
Mhm.
that there is multiple bacteria, fungi, yeasts in the gut. And many
Mm.
times when we hear bacteria, fungi, yeast, we think viruses, we think,
Mm.
oh no, it's bad, it's absolutely terrible. I know,
Mm.
especially over COVID-19, we all had a bit of a fright, and now we
Mm.
sanitize like crazy. But they found in the study that these bacteria and fungi, which they called the microbiome of the gut, they are actually helping the gut. And they found that there is 100,000 different genes in the
Wow.
gut's microbiome. So then, as human beings, being prideful creatures, we're like, okay, 20,000 genes plus 100,000 genes. Okay, we're finally better than a rice plant. Um, yeah, so it's just crazy how this has warped our understanding of the human body and what it's made up of, because it turns out that 90% of our body is bacteria and is microbiome, whereas only 10% is human body cells. So, yeah, so I think if you just understand that, that definitely shifts your mind. So more and more studies are going into the gut microbiome and trying to understand it. And as we're doing that, we're finding that so many diseases are linked with the gut. Um, and that's because the gut microbiome is not happy, is not healthy. We find I mean, when we think of the gut, we think of digestive issues. We think of celiac disease. We think of ulcerative colitis. We think heartburn. We think diverticulitis. Those are all the gut symptoms and diseases. The IBS, is a big one. But when we look at the gut, we see that all those bacteria, all that little fungi and yeasts, they actually help our bodies with so many functions that we cannot do for ourselves. It breaks down certain food for us. It synthesizes vitamins for us, and that's things that our body can't do. So yeah, so we found that the gut that's unhealthy, which is known as dysbiosis, can be linked with many illnesses such as type 2 diabetes. You get obesity, you get autism and your ADHD, your Alzheimer's, your autoimmune diseases, even severe reactions to common viruses. Like they found that people with a bad gut microbiome would also
Mhm.
struggle a lot under the COVID-19 virus. So yeah, so I think that our gut is incredibly important when it comes to our overall health, especially knowing that there's the gut-brain axis. I'm pretty sure some of your listeners have heard of the term because it's all the craze right now, about the brain being linked with the gut. And they do that via the vagus nerve, obviously, but there's also some other connection. We find that serotonin, which is our happy hormone, that only 10% of our serotonin is made in the brain. The other 90% is made in our gut. So someone struggling with depression might need to look at their gut and not necessarily their brain. So yeah, I think the gut is definitely important to be looked at.
Okay, in terms of spotting the signs, what are some of the earliest or most overlooked signs that someone's gut might be out of balance?
Yeah, I think there's the obvious symptoms that we all know of about unhappy gut, and that would be bloating,
Mm.
diarrhea, constipation. You'd have, any heartburn or increased flatulence, farting, or burping. And so that's kind of some telltale signs that there's excess fermentation happening in the gut, or a lack of it in some cases. So yeah, so those are the first signs. But then also, if you have a tendency towards getting sick,
Mm.
um, if you have a chronic illness that just doesn't want to react to whatever you are treating it with. I mean, I did my master's research in gut health actually, and how gut health can be an obstacle to a person finding their cure. So someone might have their mental health issues, and we don't treat the gut, they will stay stuck in that cycle, because the unhealthy gut is an obstacle to that person being well again. Yeah, so definitely if you're tired too, if you have brain fog, if there's any arthritis or ADHD, autism, I would definitely, it's getting more and more linked with the gut health. So yeah, so there's that common digestive signs, but then also some systemic signs that we should be looking out for.
Okay, can symptoms like fatigue or brain fog really be traced back to gut health? And if so, how?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So as I mentioned, fatigue and brain fog definitely is one of the things that we need to look out for when we're looking at gut health. And just, I mean, if you think overall health, those things are the first things that bother us, and that makes us go to the doctor when we know something isn't well. And the way it does this might be through the gut microbiome. And so what happens is the bacteria in the gut is supposed to be protecting us, and dealing with stuff that our body can't necessarily deal with. So what happens when we don't have a good gut microbiome, then we find that the substances, the food that should only be dealt with in the gut is able to permeate and go into the bloodstream. This is known as a leaky gut. And so that leaky gut allows stuff through the gut barrier that it shouldn't be allowing. And then the consequence would be a overall inflammation in the body. We find that there is so much of the immune system is situated in the belly, in the gut lining. And because if you think about it, that's the first space where microbes and viruses and stuff needs to be fought. It's not only in the lungs, but the gut is exposed to a lot of foreign things. Um, So a lot of immunity is there and a lot of inflammation is in the gut. So if your gut's not happy, you're going to have
Mm,
immunity issues, you're going to have inflammation issues, and that's just going to travel to the entire body.
mm.
And that in itself is draining. That's why you have your brain fog. That's why you have your fatigue.
Okay. In terms of decoding the jargon, could you give us a quick breakdown of common gut health terms like microbiome, dysbios, probiotics, and leaky gut in plain language?
Yes, of course. I've been using some of these terminology already, but
Mm-hmm.
gut microbiome is all the bacteria, the yeast, the fungi, some viruses even. That's the microorganisms within your gut lining from the small intestine to the colon, and it inhabits there. It's the ecosystem of those microorganisms is called the gut microbiome. And so we all want a good, happy, healthy gut microbiome. But what happens when it's unhealthy, it could either have increased levels of harmful microorganisms, or it could just be a lack of good microorganisms. Um, what it also could be um, is a lack of diversity of different microorganisms. We want as many different microorganisms as we can in there. And when this doesn't happen, when we have an imbalance of that microbiome, that is known as dysbiosis. So dys meaning like disease, like it's not nice. Dysbiosis. So there's either too much of the bad, too little of the good, not enough of everything. That's when we get dysbiosis. Then probiotics is, I think, something we've all encountered when we talk about antibiotics and we go to
Mm,
Discam or Clicks and we find probiotics on the shelves. So probiotics is those little microorganisms that should be living in your gut. So if you have a lack of variety, you don't have a big diversity of microorganisms in the gut, you take a probiotic, that probiotic might contain that microorganism itself, and then now you have that microorganism in your gut. So that's all good. Then we also get something called prebiotics. And prebiotics is not a live organism, unlike probiotics, but prebiotics is the food for the microorganisms. So that's the stuff that's going to keep your microorganisms, your microbiota in the
mm-hmm.
microbiome. It's a lot of words, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's going to keep that healthy and going to keep it fed. So that's your difference between the pro and the prebiotics. Then leaky gut, as I talked about before, the leaky gut is whenever what's in the gut is able to go through the gut lining into the bloodstream when it's not supposed to. And that happens when you don't have enough um, microbiome, it's not happy, it's not healthy, you don't have enough gut um, mucus that helps to protect the body. So you get little gaps and soft or places where the harmful stuff can enter the bloodstream. That's called leaky gut syndrome.
All right. Okay. In terms of the simple gut-friendly habits, for someone just starting out, what are 2 or 3 simple daily habits you recommend to begin healing and supporting the gut?
Great question. And I think this is such an easy, um, straightforward answer, really, but it is
Mm-hmm.
your diet,
Mm-hmm.
your exercise, your sleep, and your stress. And I mean, we all hear these things when we hear about a disease. We hear, like, oh, you need to work on your diet, work on your
Mm,
exercise, work on your stress and your sleep. And it kind of gets droned into us. But there's very
mm,
important reasons why. So many times we think, oh, okay, diet and stress helps the the blood pressure, to normalize the blood pressure. Yes, but it also affects the gut, and the gut has an influence on the blood pressure itself. So many diseases that we thought is in itself correlated with diet, stress, exercise, sleep, could actually be connected with the gut and then to the disease. So if you don't get your sleep, the microbiome is definitely going to be affected. If you eat certain foods feed certain bacteria. So if you only have a diet filled with meat and starch and fat, then you are only going to feed those bacteria and those microorganisms in the gut, which means they are going to grow in number. But then the other microbiomes that should be feeding off of your vegetables, your and your healthy fruits and stuff like that, they won't be growing in number. They'll be starved to death and decrease in size. So what you eat very directly affects your gut microbiome. So I always tell my patients, you eat the rainbow. It's not about what to stay away from, what not to eat, what to eat. It's more a case of eat as many different things as you can. And I don't mean eat every Krispy Kreme donut that you can find. I mean, you want to have all the different fruits and vegetables. You want to have your meat. You want to have your dairy and your starch, your gluten, if you're able to digest it. Um, and you want to have a little bit of sugar, but not in excess, you know. So it's all about controlling how much you have. Yeah, and so diet is really important to be very mindful of what you're actually eating and to make sure you get the rainbow. Your plate should look very colorful. And then yes, your with the diet goes drinking enough water. If you don't have water, the bowels can't move the stool through the colon, and then you struggle with constipation and the gut microbiome gets affected. And we should also exercise. Exercise even 15 to 20 minutes of a brief walk every day has such an impactful effect on your gut health. So that's definitely something to consider, as well as stress management. Stress is an incredible thing that affects everything in our body, but especially our gut. And that is because of the gut brain axis.
It's nice that you mentioned about stress management because that was actually about to be my next question. How important is stress management for gut health, and are there practical ways to support both the gut and nervous system?
Yes, of course. So yeah, the gut-brain axis, that's that vagus nerve. It's the brain and the gut communicates with each other. And we find even in people where the vagus nerve has been severed, we still find the brain and the gut talking. And if you think about it, many times, if you're stressed, you might have a runny tummy. So it makes sense that these two are very closely linked and they talk to one another. Your gut makes a lot of the hormones that is also made in your brain. So if your gut isn't healthy, that's going to affect your brain. If your brain isn't healthy, that is going to affect your gut. So I mean, we live in the modern age where stress is the norm, but it is really about managing the stress as best as we can, learning to practice mindfulness, to have relaxation techniques in our everyday life. Whatever that may look like for you, whatever winds your nervous system down. Journaling is a good way of trying to do that, as well as spending some time in nature. You know, if you're religious, praying has a great effect on one's stress levels. Casting all anxieties is a really important practice for anyone who wants to live a happy and healthy life, to manage their stress effectively, because you cannot avoid stress.
Mhm.
Not at all times. Sometimes there's certain situations where someone is in a terrible life stage or environment or relationship, and that affects their life and their stress levels greatly. So many times we homeopaths would refer someone like that who has constant stress that cannot be dealt with to a psychologist so that they can manage that.
Okay, in terms of the common pitfall, what are some common mistakes people make when they try to improve their gut, like taking lots of probiotics or suddenly cutting out entire food groups?
No, that definitely does happen. And I think because we're also excited about learning about gut health, and learning about its effects on overall health, there's such a craze about gut health over the counter products now. There's so many different probiotics, so many different herbal things to help cleanse the gut or to help support the gut. Um, and I think one can definitely fall victim to some of those marketing schemes and just buy whatever the label says
Hmm.
is going to help them. But I think the problem in that is that that is a very general approach. It's not specific at all. What my gut might be lacking or needing might be different from what your gut might be
Hmm.
needing. I mean, in obesity, we find that there's increased levels of vermiculites in the gut, which is directly linked to their obesity. So they will need a targeted approach to try and reduce that vermiculites. So if they constantly taking other things but not addressing the core issue, it's not going to resolve the hope of what they want to do with their own approach to their gut health is not going to be effective. So yes, there's things that you can definitely use to try and just maintain a healthy gut, but sometimes it's important to have that individualized approach and not to overdo certain things in a certain way.
Okay, is it possible to overdo gut health trends, like going overboard with fermented foods or fiber?
That is definitely a possibility. I mean, what we're trying to do is to get the gut to a normal level, a homeostasis where it stays level throughout. The gut fluctuates, obviously. If you eat something sugary, you're going to have more of that bacteria in your gut. But if you eat um, something vegetable, it's going to change in relation to that. So it really is about finding a balance. And if you go and just take a certain probiotic or take a certain supplement or like psyllium husk or fiber or something like that, and you just taking that for taking its sake because it's going to make you healthy. I don't think that that is going to provide the solution that you're hoping for. And what happens then is you put a lot of stress on your body, giving it more of what it doesn't need, and then it needs to deal with that. And then that causes a whole other balance issue. So everything in your body is balance and harmony, controlled environment. So overdoing things can also be detrimental, and people need to look out for that.
All right. Knowing when to seek help. At what point should someone stop self-managing and see a doctor about gut issues? What red flags should they not ignore?
I definitely believe that people should be self-managing. And yes, I just talked about, you know, misuse of some products and some supplements and stuff like that. But people should be self-managing. And when I say that, I mean a healthy lifestyle.
Hmm.
not just to continue your bad habits and your bad lifestyle and then just take the supplement to try and counteract it. That's not the way that health works. It never will be the way that health works. I'm sorry to break this to you, but yeah, so self-management, including making sure that you the healthy foods, a wide variety of different foods, making sure you get your exercise, making sure you drink enough water, making sure you get enough sleep, you're managing your stress. That is stuff that everyone should be doing for self-management. I would say when someone should maybe consider seeking professional help, and that would be when changing their lifestyles have not produced the effects that they're looking for. If they've done everything they can with the diet, they've done everything with the exercise, sleep, stress, whatever, and their health concern is not improving, I would definitely seek medical help. That could be a little red flag to something bigger going on. It could either be a red flag that something big is going on, or it could just be that, there's a bit of a misunderstanding as to what your gut specifically needs. So if you then go and see a healthcare practitioner that's clued up on gut health, they could help you find, okay, let's see what your gut is lacking, what your gut is needing, and have a targeted approach instead. Maybe that's the route you're needing, or otherwise, which we hope is not the case, but it could be a red flag that a healthcare professional can send you for the necessary testing and make sure that there's nothing big or worrisome going on underneath that needs to be taken care of first.
All right. My final question to you is in terms of personalization and gut health, everyone's gut is unique. How can someone begin to figure out what their gut actually needs instead of following one size fits all advice?
Yes, definitely. I think the the best approach to that is to have mindfulness and to be aware of your body and the signs and symptoms that it's showing. That's the biggest thing. Just simply having a headache and not knowing what the headache feels like, what makes a headache better or worse. And when I'm talking about better or worse, I'm not talking about medications. I'm talking about the way you move your head. What time of day is it worse? Light, noise, what affects the headache? Like when we have a symptom, we should understand that a symptom is not the enemy. The symptom is the body's way of showing, hey, I need some help. Something is not okay, So the symptom is not the issue. There's a bigger underlying root cause that needs to be addressed. And this is the body's communication method is symptoms. So when you have a symptom, listen to that symptom. What is that symptom presenting as? What makes it feel good? What makes it feel worse? When does it come? How often does it come? That is really important. But then also an individualized a gut approach is so important. So I would definitely say try and do all that lifestyle changes. Because if you haven't tried lifestyle changes and you come to me, I'm going to say go away and go try the lifestyle changes. And if that doesn't work, you come back and let me know. So first you try and do the lifestyle changes. If that doesn't work, then it's really important that your healthcare practitioner does an individualized approach. And they can only do that when they know what your symptoms is communicating to you. Everyone could have a headache. Just having a headache is not symptom enough. What comes with that headache? So if you are able to listen to your body, then you will be able to convey that to your healthcare practitioner, and then together with them, you'll be able to work out what is it that your gut needs, what your gut lacks, and what is the steps forward.
Okay. All I've got to say is thanks so much for your time and hope to catch up with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sid. Really appreciated this. It was wonderful seeing you again.
Likewise.